Welcome into Cerberus Sports Talk, episode 2. I got my main man here, Jesse, joining us. Sorry we're a little bit late. He was having some fun over there with So Rio Sunil on his channel. We're all in the family here, so no big deal. Let's get it started, dude. How you doing, my man?
I am doing fantastic. That necklace in the intro, my gosh, I've got a pretty big 49er necklace myself. That thing was like Flavor Flav, eat your heart out. Let me tell you, that was amazing. Absolutely loved it.
That was borrowing from a friend of mine. They have a DFW Niner group out here, and then we all meet up. There's about 50 to 100 of us, and he's about 300 pounds and everything. He has a couple of them, so I was sporting it for the Dallas and the Packers game. So yeah, it's a joy to wear. It makes you feel powerful, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, man. If that doesn't make you feel powerful, I don't know what does.
So, man, how you been?
I've been fantastic, man. Personally, things are going great. Obviously, the way the 49ers season ended, not the best as a fan, but there's so much to look forward to with this team. And the content just keeps on being given to us by this team. They never fail or never lack easy content, and you got to love that for sure.
It makes it fun for us. I mean, I couldn't imagine being a content creator for the Jags right now, or a team like the Jets or something like that. Like, we have every quarterback, every player, free agent rumor to us at some point or another. It makes it a lot to talk to, and it's still interesting. You got picks that we're gonna have. The Jimmy G trade, the draft, and everything like that. We still got some high picks, so we're gonna get into that right away. Let's start off with the top quarterbacks and all that drama there. Brady versus Lance. I know you guys talked about it a little bit on your show when I was watching, as far as Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's a too high of a probability. So let's just go Brady versus Lance and what that would entail. And do you think what percentage of chance do you think that Brady gets executed to beat a 49er?
Oh man, you know what? If you would have asked me this a week ago, I would have said maybe 10% max. I really think there's a 50% chance. I do. These rumors are not going away. Tom Brady has not filed paperwork to officially retire. He nowhere in his statement said he was retiring. We know that he is a 49er fanboy. Like, that is facts. That showed up in the Joe Montana documentary. And if he has a chance to finish his career here, I believe he would jump at that. So knowing that side of things, it would be 100% on board. That gives me 50% of this story is willing to do it. Now, the other 50% of this story is, are the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan willing to do it? That I don't know. And that's where the questions come in. What would they have to give up? There's so much that goes into it, but I actually think that this has legs. I really think that there's a possibility that this could happen. You also have the other side of things where, for some reason, and we know Jimmy Garoppolo does not fit that offense whatsoever. Like, fitting in Tampa Bay, I mean, that's oil and water. Like, these things will not mesh whatsoever. However, twice now in the last, week and a half, reports have come out saying that Tampa Bay is okay with Jimmy Garoppolo as a bridge type quarterback. Well, I don't think that they would want to just trade for Jimmy unless it means they're giving up Tom. So for me to hear that from their side of things, that tells me that Tampa Bay's on board. It tells me Tom Brady's on board. Is San Francisco on board? That's where the questions come in. And so I really genuinely feel like right now it's a 50-50 shot. I do.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that high. I think it's probably 30% for me in my mind, but still that's more percentage than what I thought coming into it. Because you and I are big Lance boys and everything like that. We thought we're ready to go. I was proud of what the team did this year, even though it was a heartbreaking loss. When earlier in the season, I didn't think we'd go to the NFC Championship with the way everybody was playing at that moment. It's the balancing the current winning versus future gains. Obviously, Lance could be a decade starter in this league, a decade All-Pro, with how high you think of him and everything like that. But it's hard to pass on the great one twice, and does that happen? And now let me say this. Say what you think about this. What I kind of thought that Brady might come back, maybe not for the Niners in general, but kind of just wait until half the season's over And if there's an injury to a team that needs a quarterback, or like, somebody goes down and he can fill in and win a team, like win a ring with somebody, like say Jimmy G goes to the Steelers. Jimmy G gets injured like he often does. And then Brady just signs with the Steelers for almost no money because he doesn't need it. And he just proves that he's the GOAT, winning a third ring or a ring with another team because he wants to, and he only has to play 8 games. I think that's more likely than him coming to the Niners, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see a scenario like that, and here's the reason why. I feel like Tom Brady's the type of guy that actually enjoys the grind. Like you hear this a lot with veterans, right? Like, oh man, I hate training camp and all that stuff's for the birds and the rookies and whatever. I genuinely feel like Tom Brady enjoys all of that. I feel like he enjoys being a part of a team. I feel like he enjoys being a leader. And I feel like to me, he's not the type of guy that would come in mid-season because he's a perfectionist. And if he doesn't have all of his ducks in a row and he's not comfortable with it, he doesn't know the offense or whatever, he doesn't know his teammates, he's not on the same page with them, I feel like he's the type of guy that'll just sit out. Like, to me, he wants to be the best version of himself. And that means training camp through, he has to be a part of whatever's going on top of being a good leader, on top of being ultra prepared. I just feel like that's his MO. And so to me, I actually don't think Tom Brady would be that type of guy that would be willing to come in because he wants to sit out training camp and he gets the edge. Like, he's either going to really want to play and do everything he can to do so, or he's just not going to play. That's what the vibe that I get from him. You could be right, though. He definitely, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't say that he couldn't do it. I just don't feel like that's his MO.
Now that you say that, that does make a lot of sense after watching Man in the Arena and all that kind of stuff like that, the kind of the person he is. I kind of just thought, because, I didn't really realize that he didn't file the papers until a couple days ago. So I was kind of thinking like, hey, like he's decided to retire. And then maybe, that would be an itch that he would get halfway through the season. But it seems to me, with not filing those papers, he's waiting for a offer that he would like to do it. And then he would kind of not force the Bucs' hands, but say, hey, I won you a ring. Just help me out here and let's move on. It'd be interesting to say. And so, like, you being such a Lance guy, and then Brady's the GOAT, like, what would you do if you were the GM? Put your GM hat on, talk to Lynch. Like, where would you like to see this go out?
Man, this is this is probably the toughest question there is, because how do you say no to Tom Brady, right? And if you asked me 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said no to Tom Brady. There's 0% chance. I watched him in that Titans game. I knew that there was a lot left in that tank. And so for them to pass on him then, I just feel like it would be weird timing to bring him back now. I feel like that ship has sailed a little bit. That being said, if you bring in Tom Brady, that does probably give you the best chance to win a Super Bowl this year. I acknowledge that. But if you don't win, there's so much that goes into it. You've now pushed Trey Lance back one more year. You've gone after, probably instead of bringing in guys that could grow with this team in free agency, you go and you bring in a bunch of one-year guys. And now what's left for Trey Lance if Tom Brady leaves? Now, if you do win a Super Bowl and Tom Brady wants to stay, then what does that mean for Trey Lance? He's now sitting for a 4th straight year, 3 years in the NFL and 1 year in college. At some point, it's just too much. There's a tipping point. So for me, I really believe in Trey Lance, like, a lot. And so I understand if maybe you don't believe in Trey Lance, and I'm not saying you, Brandon, but I'm just saying in general, if you're not a Trey Lance guy or you don't believe that he can be that guy eventually, I would understand why you would say, well, you got to bring in Tom Brady. He's the GOAT. I don't think it's that easy. Like, for me, I think there's so much more that goes into it. I really think that Trey Lance is going to be a franchise quarterback. And I feel like doing this the wrong way certainly can ruin all of that. And I don't know if I'm willing to put all that to the side for a shot at 1 to 2 years and then never seeing this kid develop and play and have a real shot at this being his team. For me, I'm not overriding those 15 years for a possible 2-year stint here. So for me, I'm actually leaning towards going with Trey Lance.
Yeah, it would be hard for me to look, quote unquote, stupid again by passing on Brady. But I do believe in, if you made that much of an investment in Trey Lance to move up to 3 to and put all that stuff in, then you obviously believed in him. Obviously, there were reports out. I mean, rumors might be rumors that the only reason he didn't start the season as the starter was the finger, and that they were going to make that move. Who knows if that was the truth? There was multiple times throughout the season when Jimmy was on his last leg, and they were going to make that move midseason. And he showed in the Texans game, right? It was the first game in the last four, or it was the best game in the last 4 years with the most air yards by a quarterback. Him airing it out, him throwing it downfield, and doing those things. And I think that's only going to get better. And you're going to take the lumps, but if you can take the Jimmy lumps and still make it that far in the playoffs, you're going to be able to take some rookie lumps as well. And that team is going to be good enough to move forward. And I know the Brady free agent aspect of, oh, you're going to get Gronk for a cheap amount to be a backup tight end and all this other stuff. I think if Trey Lance balls out this year, you're going to see a lot of people wanting to play with him. And so, it's going to be something to see here and how that moves forward and what players can you get. And, because there's Kittle's getting older. And so, you're eventually, when Trey Lance is around 25 years old, he's going to be playing with a different tight end, and all that stuff is going to, gestate together. And ultimately you want a dynasty. I mean, I get it. I've never seen a Niners ring, or at least I can't remember when I was like 7 when they last won one. So,
Right.
So I say that I want Lance, but I would give anything for another title, or maybe, to watch it there. And so it's hard for me, but I really believe in Lance as well. And I think he'll do great things. And I think this team is stacked enough to where we can win. And if you look at the possibilities in the NFC, if Aaron Rodgers retires, if the Kyle Murray thing doesn't get etched out, Deshaun Watson is still up in the air. Russell Wilson is playing for a bad team. Like, they're the second best team, or maybe first best team in the NFC. And the AFC's got all those other quarterbacks. I mean, you might be able to count your ticket for the next, 4 or 5 years until rosters, change over in the NFC and there's another Titan that comes in the arena. So for me, I would probably go Lance just because I believe in the kid. But it would be hard to pass up on the GOAT.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is how much do you believe in Trey Lance? And for us guys that thoroughly believe in him, I think that's the way that we're leaning. And I know it does. It sounds probably a little crazy to pass on the GOAT, but I believe in Trey Lance. Now, 2 years ago, I didn't believe in Jimmy, and I do obviously believe in Tom. I did then, I do now, but I'm not willing to forego possible multiple years. And again, a horrible scenario is just banking on the fact you're going to win a Super Bowl. If he comes in and pushes that year back one more year, and you passed up on some guys that you could have signed for multiple years to be a part of this team to really go make a run at it, and then you fall short and he retires and this roster's depleted a little bit because of it, I'm just not willing to do that. I think Lance is going to be that guy. Let's develop him. Let's go through it. Let's see how it works out, and let's ride this wave.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it's just something to look at. And then there's also the fear of buying a franchise in Blockbuster the year before Netflix comes out.
Right.
His father time eventually going to defeat Brady. He threw for over 5,000, I think close to 5,000, over 5,000 yards this year. But, can he really play at 45, 46 years old, continuing there? Is the defense going to be able to carry him? Who knows? But I believe in Lance. I think that he'll do a good job. And I think that we can win games next year with him at quarterback, regardless of the stakes, right? Jimmy was 20-12 as far as touchdown and interceptions. I'm sure with Lance running the football and scrambles, there might be a fumble or two or whatever. But, if he gets 30 touchdowns combined and has, the same amount of turnovers as Jimmy, and our defense plays the same way, we're going to be winning games. But you're going to get the high. You have the chance at the highs with Lance, at him progressing and exceeding those numbers. And there's some people putting out ridiculous stats like 5,050 like Mahomes. Again, I don't expect that. But, if I could see him throwing for 4,000, 30 tugs, around 10 interceptions, and a couple of rushing touchdowns. And I could see that respectively as the season progresses.
Well, yeah, I took his 6 quarters of being the full-time quarterback and got rid of all the rest of the stats, but just took the 2 quarters against Seattle, the 4 quarters against Arizona, and the 4 quarters against the Texans. and I basically calculated that out to a 17 game season, it was like 4,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing, like 35 total touchdowns, somewhere like 14 total turnovers at 57% completion. Yeah, you're taking that. Like, are you talking
Yeah.
5,000 yards all in and 35 touchdowns? Of course. And that's when he's at his, I mean, I would like to think that's when he's at his worst. Like he's only going to improve from there. So I'm not saying he's going to put up those numbers. I don't know if he's quite the runner that people want to make him out to be. People say he's a run first quarterback and all this other crap. I don't think he's quite that. So I'm not saying he's in a rush for 1,000, but I genuinely feel like he can put up some pretty good numbers. I certainly wouldn't bank on Mahomes type numbers year one. And again, this is a running offense. This is not the type of offense that's just going to come out and throw it all over the yard. So just knowing how it's going to be managed by Shanahan, that's not a good way to place your money. But I think he can do a lot more than what Jimmy brought to the table. And I would expect that the statistics do back that up.
Well, that's a good segue to our next topic, and this has been a debate on Twitter Spaces and in bars and everything like that. His trade value. You have the Jimmy haters who don't think he's worth a bag of footballs, and you have other people that think we can get a first round pick for him. Where do you lie on that scale, and which teams do you think that he would probably benefit most by going to and be able to succeed?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this since before the Titans game. I felt like he's probably worth a max third round pick. I said that he would be worth a fourth round pick in the future that could escalate up to a third, depending on how he played with that team, whether it's you want to put stipulations in for performance, games played, whatever. I do think that there are teams now that are in more desperate situations to where I could see them getting a third this year potentially, but I really don't believe anything near a first is going to happen. I would be shocked if they got a second. I think that third round pick is about where it is for him. And, teams like the Commanders, I look at them. Ron Rivera cannot have another losing season. If he gets fired, he's not going to coach in the league anymore. So I think the Commanders is a great spot. I could see them quote unquote overpaying a little bit for Jimmy to make it happen. Um, People have been floating out. I don't know where this one came from, but Chase Young for Jimmy G, that's not going to happen. I don't. There is no chance that happens. There is zero danger of that.
I have somebody propose Sweat.
I know. I've said I'll take either one. Like, yes, I'll take either one of those. So, I don't believe those things will happen. But if they can get a third for Jimmy, a team like the Commanders, a team like the Steelers, hell, even the Saints or Panthers, I could see that going down. I really could. If Tom Brady does in fact come to the 49ers, then obviously that could be a move. I just don't see that fit at all with Tampa. So unless Tom Brady ends up here, I don't think he ends up in Tampa. But those other three teams, I definitely think there's a real possibility, and I think they would be great fits for him.
Yeah, I kind of thought that they might get in. I think the market is beneficial for Jimmy right now. I think he's probably the easiest quarterback to move out of Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson, and then him. The big four that are available, or I guess the big three in the leftover. But I think you're looking at something along like package and a conditional. So you're Jimmy in a third for Jimmy in a fourth for a second round pick. And it's you get a conditional extra fourth if he does this or that, or maybe Jimmy in our second for a first in the future, not this year first, not the 11th overall for the Redskins, but if the Redskins get Jimmy which they would to essentially make the playoffs, or say the Steelers, then you're hoping that picks in the 25 to 32 range. And if you're doing Jimmy and our second this year, so you're getting another pick to help Jimmy be successful in this year's draft for a future first. I don't know if San Francisco does that because then they don't have a pick in the first two rounds. But if they're going to maximize the value and try to get a first round pick out of it, I can kind of see a stipulated trade involving one of our higher picks plus Jimmy to get that first. But if straight up just for Jimmy, like Jimmy for one pick, I think he's probably a third round pick or a conditional third that moves to a second, similar to kind of like Wentz. How many games he plays, yardage, wins, and all that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy in a second for a mid to late first. Yeah, I could possibly see that for sure. I think I threw that out as like a scenario with the Steelers a couple weeks back. But that's very different than just Jimmy straight up
Yeah.
for first, the way that some people have reported or thought. I think it's come out recently that around the league, people are thinking more like along the lines of a third. I think that's fair. I think that's about right for Jimmy Garoppolo.
And as much as people bash him, if he goes to the Commanders, Steelers, or Bucks, all three of those teams are going to be playoff teams with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback.
Yeah, they should be. Absolutely. Saints as well. I think the
Yeah.
Saints can be.
So it'd be definitely something interesting. It's going to be something that I think has to get done soon, right? I mean, you want to have your roster kind of set. If you know you're going with Trey Lance, then your free agency and draft is different. If you know you're rolling with Tom Brady, your free agency or draft is going to be different. And I think the team that is trading for Jimmy G is going to want to have that set up going forward. So let's bring it over. Let's kind of switch gears here. And Lynn, we brought in Anthony Lynn. He's been a fantastic run guru in his day, a head coach, and kind of has a different attitude as far as that goes. With maybe his coaching style being known a little bit more as a player's coach, where Kyle's kind of a disciplinarian. What do you think his role is going to be? And then what does he bring to the coaching staff?
He brings a lot to the coaching staff. I mean, I remember watching him on Hard Knocks. I admired the guy. Regardless of what that record was, I genuinely admired what he brought to the table as a leader. I could see players getting behind him. Obviously, losing McDaniel, naturally you look at the run game coordinator as a possibility. But just being a head coach, being able to help and support what Shanahan needs done, regardless of what that is, whether that's administrative, whether that's leadership, whatever he needs to bring, I have full confidence in Lynn. And I think, and you already see it. First of all of these rumors are coming out about Trey Lance and, is he the guy? Is he a bust? Everybody's saying things. Quietly, Anthony Lynn came out and said, I don't know. I watched this guy in college. I think he's a stud. I liked him then. I like him now. I like everything he brings to the table. That right there is leadership. So he has already made an imprint on this team, in my opinion, in a positive manner. And I think that is the biggest thing that he brings to the table is just that leadership. People want to go to war for him. People, just as a person, you can tell he's just a good guy. And when people talk about him, that comes out. So, yeah, I think he brings a lot to the 49ers. Super happy that he's here, especially in the absence of McDaniel going forward.
Yeah, I think it's good for him and his career. I think it's good for the Niners. And looking forward, you might have both of our offensive and our assistant head coach and our defensive coordinator be head coaches and have to start completely over, in the season after. But if we have the season, I think we're going to have. I think we'll take that. But yeah, I mean, Anthony Lynn has had 1,000-yard rusher or a combination of tandem over 1,000 yards every single year that he's been a coach or a running coordinator or anything like that. You saw him pair Melvin Gordon and Eckler in his last stint. So maybe that bodes well for the Sermon Mitchell punch. And maybe, that'll get Shanahan to kind of mix it up a little bit. I wonder what he'll bring scheme wise. We've seen the fact that they've gone more power as the year's gone on and not all outside zone. Do you think he switches up the kind of the run style that they're going to use this year? Or is it mainly just going to be, fitting within the schematic confines of Shanahan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really falls on whatever Shanahan wants to do. Ultimately, I mean, he's the shot caller, but yeah, I think he can help for sure. I mean, bring a different dynamic. You brought in Sermon, you brought in Banks, you brought in some of these big boys to do something a little bit different and to play with Trey Lance, quite frankly. So, yeah, I mean, I expect that he's able to help that out. Maybe looks at things a little bit differently schematically and just helps tighten things up. You've got to constantly be evolving. You can't just stand still, be the same thing over and over. You look at what Shanahan looked like even in 2019 to 2021. He changed a lot about what he did schematically. Certain plays he would run in certain situations. You've got to always be evolving, and bringing in a guy like Lynn certainly helps you stay on the cutting edge and bring in a different perspective, and somebody that I've got to imagine that Shanahan looks up to as a man, that he's going to take what he has to say and take it at face value and not feel like, oh man, this guy's doesn't know what he's talking about. Shanahan comes off like he feels like he's the smartest guy in the room. You hear that a lot, but I genuinely think he has a respect for a lot of the guys on his staff. And I think Lynn certainly brings that credibility, somebody that Shanahan could look up to as a male figure, and certainly can help him be more diverse and be that voice that could really hold him accountable.
Yeah, I think it shows growth in Shanahan. He's been promoting from within a lot. And now you're bringing a guy who has the same credentials as you. I mean, he had one of the his offense in San Diego was, or LA now was, top 11 every single year he was there. He changed from a rushing attack to a pure passing attack with Allen and Williams there. And so, he was able to make adjustments, and he has the credentials that are similar, equal, as far as not going, as far in the playoffs, but, being his tenure as a head coach, his time in the league and all that kind of stuff to Shanahan, and to bring a guy that can kind of challenge that as from a standpoint of being in the league, I think shows growth from Shanahan, and I think it'll help the locker room as a whole. Let's move on to a question from me in the dream here. Do you think Trey will have a better year than Mac Jones next season?
Man, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, yeah, I'll just say yes. Short answer, yes. He's better than Mac Jones, period. So certainly by the end of 2023, it'll be very obvious the difference between not only he and Mac Jones, but he and Fields, he and Zach Wilson, and possibly even he and Lawrence. So yes, I do think he'll have a better year than Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think the only thing Mac Jones might beat him in is the amount of turnovers. Maybe on the season he doesn't see, with Trey Lance throwing the ball downfield and how much he's going to be running. Maybe Mac Jones has less turnovers, but I think overall
completion percentage, he'll probably complete at a higher clip.
But I think Trey overall will be a better player, and I think the Niners win more games than the Pats next year too.
Yeah, I would say if they both play 17 games, all in yards, I mean, with the rushing all in, he's certainly going to have more yards. He'll have more touchdowns, maybe slightly more turnovers, lower completion percentage. So it depends on what you value. But yeah, I think it'll be very clear. I mean, if you saw these guys on the field, like one of these guys could be a top 5 to 7 quarterback, and the other guy he's holding a starting job in the NFL. Like that'll be very clear.
Yeah, one of these things are not like the other.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right, let's move it on to Niners free agency. And from this standpoint here is, what UFA do you think the Niners are going to lose? And which ones do you think they're going to hold on to? I know we can't pay everybody. A lot of other teams, Dolphins get rumored that about every one of our free agents because of that. Same thing with the Jets. So, which guys do you think we're going to maybe get outbid, or do you think that the Niners will pass on and move on to other pastures?
Gosh, if I had to be a prognosticator here, I would say that Tart comes back. I would say that Arden Key comes back. I would say that DJ Jones to me is a 50-50. K'Wan Williams will not be back. I would say Laken Tomlinson probably is not back. I look at the Dolphins, but I also look at the Bengals. I think the Bengals have a real chance at making a run at somebody like a Laken Tomlinson. They've got a ton of money. They certainly need some offensive line help. It's a very good team. It's not like he's going to go there and not compete. Obviously the Dolphins, certainly that's a great fit as well with McDaniel being over there. But, I think the Bengals can work out as well. So I think Tomlinson is probably worth more than what the 49ers are willing to pay. I also think the 49ers drafted Banks and Jalen Moore for a reason, that they're comfortable, or at least trying to be comfortable with the fact that those guys could play the guard spots. So yeah, I think he walks. Mostert is a 50-50 for me. God, I could see him ending up with the Dolphins. I really could. If anybody ends up with the Dolphins, I would lean more towards him. But I also know that he does like San Francisco. So I don't know. I think it'll come down to him, money or San Francisco. We'll see what goes on there. Let's see. Any other big names that I'm missing out on? I mean, obviously we have, the restricted guys that will certainly be back. I would say that's probably most of the the big
the big
names there.
ones.
So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you. I think a little bit on some of them. I don't think Arden Key's going to be back. I think he'll kind of have a hider type market this year. Supremely athletic, and you saw how much of a dumpster fire Las Vegas has been, and
Yeah,
so
for sure.
and so maybe people think, okay, well, it wasn't Oakland, it's San Francisco, and this is the talent we're going to get, and we're only going to get more. And 1 year of Hyder's production got him paid by Seattle. I think we might get outbid there, and so I think he's maybe gone. I think DJ Jones provides more production from the interior, and I think they might choose to draft an edge in the second round, and so kind of maybe switch up there, just choosing a different defensive lineman. In my opinion, I do think K1 is out. They'll probably try to get younger there. Another position I think they might draft high is safety. And I think a team like the Jets, who was pretty piss poor and from the defensive standpoint, might pay Tart a little bit more. But it is also a big safety market. There's Tyrann Mathieu and stuff, people out there like that team with a lot of salary could pay up for. So we'll see how that goes. I think Lakin's gone, though. I just, with him being arguably the number one guard on the market, if not top two, you're probably looking at 10 plus mil a year is what I would guess for him. This is his last chance at a big deal, being 30. And, I think that he gets his bag and we're going to have to move on, which probably means they draft another interior offensive lineman, whether it be a center or a guard in the draft, to kind of just have a full out competition. But we'll see how that goes. I think Lincoln's pretty much gone. Mozart will come down to whether he likes San Francisco because his family lives here. He's a big family man. He's been open about that. So if he doesn't want to uproot his family and wants to stay here and take less money just to be on the Niners, I think that might weigh more in his head than money. But if Miami throws 2 or 3 more million at him, you're not going to shy away from that either for a guy who's been injured most of his tenure here. So that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I don't know what you think about that.
Let me walk you through the Arden Key one, because I think you're right.
Okay.
I think he's certainly going to be offered a lot more than what San Francisco is probably willing to pay. I think he's going to bet on himself. And so I hear him talk about the stability in San Francisco, how a well-run organization is and how much that means to him. And I also am forecasting, knowing he's one of the younger guys, right? He has some good football ahead of him, many years ahead of him. And knowing that he can flourish here for a second straight year, and also knowing that salary cap is going up significantly next year, he may pass on, let's say, $5 million this year for a future 20 extra million, because he's now put together back-to-back years. He loves the culture. He knows he can be successful here, and teams are going to have more money to throw his way next season. So that's my thought with him. I could be reading the scenario all wrong. Obviously, these guys are going to make decisions that are best for them. You never know what can happen in the NFL. You may be done after 1 year. So maybe he's like, hey, listen, I need the money now. But I just feel like he's that type of guy that is smart about it, has seen the other side of things, and is like, all right, I can go take a 1 year deal or a 2 year deal over here for, say, 2 years, 12 million, or I can take a 1 year, $3 million deal here, bet on myself, and get paid 40 million over 4 years next year. So that's the way that I kind of see it playing out with Arden, but who knows?
We had a player do that this year in Jason Verrett, and it didn't work out for
Exactly.
him.
No,
but
it definitely did not.
But the thought process is the same. And
Yep.
if you're willing to bet on yourself, and the Niners are going to have probably 5 primetime games next year, like they do. I think they have the last couple of years. So you're going to get on TV. You're going to have a winning record. You're probably going to get to the playoffs. You're going to get another year under Chris to move your game. And if you saw, I forget who posted on Twitter, but the defensive line, the stats after week 7, it was just astronomical difference on how much help the rest of the D line had. Armstead is probably going to be a consistent factor in the interior. So I don't mind that. If he's willing to bet on himself and he's like, hey, this is for my future, as long as I don't get injured, like I'm going to get paid big money the following year, I could see that. And I wouldn't be opposed to that, because he wrecked shop towards the end of the season. So,
I would love to have him. But then the flip side of that is, if he walks, I'm not worried about it, because I know that Kosaric has it. You know what I mean? So there will be another one, whoever that is. And a Menahu, I would imagine that who's the other defensive end? Willis, I'd imagine he'll be back. So yeah, man, I'm not too worried about it either way. But we'll see what happens there.
Let's move it on over here to the wide receiver room. So where we don't have a lot of people signed is in the wide receiver room, and we got a couple restricted free agents like Jennings, but for the most part, it's just Ayuk and Deebo Samuel now. How do you view the wide receiver room? Where do you think they need to improve, and what guys would you bring back next season?
Yeah, really, there's only one other guy. He earned that spot to be your number 3 wide receiver. Um, Early restricted free agent. He'll be back. Jennings will be back, but outside of that, they need a burner. And they could go a couple different directions. I've said that a guy that I would kick the tires on is Deshaun Jackson. The only thing that gives me pause there is Deshaun is kind of a bit of a me guy. He did force his way off of a team that just won a Super Bowl because he wasn't getting enough touches at like 36 years old. So, maybe that's still an issue, but, I think that just having that deep threat would go very, very well with this team. Obviously, you can spend a fourth, fifth, sixth round pick on a guy, a speed guy as well. There are some guys in this draft that you could go after, but that's like the one thing they need. I feel like they've got their red zone threat in Jennings. They've got their Swiss Army knife in Deebo. They've got a pure receiver who I think is going to have a very good year next year in Brandon Ayuk. They just need that burner. And, whether you get it through free agency or whether you get it in the draft, there are multiple ways to do it. And it shouldn't cost this team a lot of money. And then from there, you're probably going to bring in some guys that either don't make other teams that have been in the league for a while, or guys that just didn't get drafted that you're going to kick the tires on. That's probably how they'll fill out the rest of the roster, some special teams guys and what have you. But for me, really it's probably just those 3 that are for sure back, and then we'll see about the rest of them.
Yeah, I think Jennings is a for sure. I would bring back Trent Sherfield. I think he proved himself on the special teams last year as a
Yeah.
gunner. Getting 2 new guys to come in might be a big asking with how much people we have to sign. So Sherfield's not going to be expensive. He had a good special teams role. I think he's competent enough to play wide receiver if Ayuk and or Debo go down. I've been listening, obviously, as everybody does, tons of Niners content and people already doing the deep dives on the draft and free agency. And a guy that I think might be in free agency that would be somebody that I would maybe poke some tires on is Jakeem Grant in Miami. And so he's not a wide receiver, per se, as far as like an every down, but the special teams was so piss poor last year that I think that he could offer. I looked at his stats and he's had a touchdown every single year in the return game. So, having a game where we are able to break 1 or 2 off, he wouldn't be that expensive. And then, through the draft, and, Raphael here stole my thunder a little bit in the draft. Calvin Austin out of Memphis. So, you look at, let's see where I have his profile up here. You look at his draft profile, 5'9", 173, probably soaking wet 173. He's probably closer to 160 and everything like that. But he's got 4.2, 4.2 speed. And so he's definitely can take the top off of it. He has that receiver mentality in the return mentality in the game. And I think that's somebody that you can have go downfield and play the return game. And then everybody's favorite to get to pair them back up is Christian Watson from North Dakota State, Lance's teammate, 6'4", runs a 4.3 and everything like that. So it's something along those lines that I think you have to have somebody that can take the top off the field. And that's, I think there's a number 1 priority to involve a guy of that nature into the wide receiver room.
Yeah, there's another guy who, you could probably get pretty late, or maybe even undrafted, and that's Jalen Naylor out of Michigan State. This kid's a burner as well, small guy, quick, just can take the top off. So, those are the types of guys that you're probably going to want to fill out the rest of this room with.
Yeah, I think I think special teams is a huge need. Get a returner type guy in there that also doubles as a burner, and then a true guy that can take the top off that has multiple. And why not get 2? The way that they're looking with how much Lance is going to look down the field all the time, it's only going to help Deebo Samuel underneath and Ayuk underneath. Not that they can't run deep routes as well, but it's going to help all that underneath timing stuff that they like to run. I hope they start throwing the ball to the running back a little bit more if the field gets stretched out and get the ball in Mitchell's hands right away. So the type of receiver is definitely a burner. I think people underestimate with how good Ayuk is going to be next year, and how good Deebo Samuel was and Kittle there, that we don't need a wide receiver because we run a lot. But I think the only reason we didn't have the dimension of the deep pass is because of our quarterback. And I think that's going to change next year, and you have to have personnel that fits that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
So let's move to our last topic here before we get going out is the NFL draft, second and third round. So right now we have two, and we have, a couple picks in those rounds. We might be getting more with the Jimmy G trade. Where do you think the early, second and third round, you have potential first year starters there? Some people say don't draft for need, draft BPA. But where do you think that they should address? What positions do you think they should address in these early rounds that they could get some maybe impact starters year one?
Yeah, I would say stick with the defense. Edge rusher certainly could be used to bookend with Bosa for many years to come. I look at that nickel corner spot is an area of need. I look at interior offensive line. You could go that route. There's a few different directions. Safety, if they don't bring back Tart, that's another option. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be dictated obviously by what they do in free agency, but those are four areas right there that I could definitely see him going with those first two picks. That's why, Jimmy also, bringing in that value is going to be very helpful, because imagine, like, let's say you let Tart walk, you're going to need to fill that spot. You're going to need an edge, and then possibly a nickel corner or an interior offensive lineman. They can fill that really right there, all in the second and third rounds, back to back to back. So I think that'd be a great way to start off the draft if they can figure out a way to fill all those needs, or at least three of those needs. And that's how I would look at it. I've personally haven't gotten too deep into the whole draft. There are some names that I like, but edge I have been looking at. I've looked at a few guys, Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, Boye Mafe out of Minnesota, and Nick Bonito out of Oklahoma. Those are three guys that are probably going to be there or have a chance to be there at that 63rd overall pick. And so, that's what I've been looking at as edge. I'm going to switch my focus a little bit to some of these corners and safeties, but yeah, I think there's a ton of talent out there to be had. This draft to me isn't very top heavy, but the talent kind of lingers into, the later rounds in this draft. And there's a lot of people out there that I would love to have donning that red and gold for sure.
Yeah, some of the draft shows I've been listening to, they say that there really isn't much of a drop off from 40 up to around 100 there, and so there's really a lot of players that could be in that round. I would think a team that's ready to go right now, they just need to take BPA. They just don't need to force the position. It seemed like they forced Banks in that position there. Like, hey, we need to get stronger on the interior. Let's take Banks, that guy there, in this round, and we'll kind of go from there. If they take an edge, safety, heck, if they lose Lincoln Thompson, they take another guard or there. I wouldn't be mad at wide receiver if somebody falls that we don't really see there. But really take the guy that's the best player available and be like water, and I think we need all those. I personally am a secondary guy, coverage over defensive line. I know they work symbiotically and everything like that, but they haven't taken a defensive back in the top 2 rounds since Jimmy Ward. And so kind of have a high end starter there, and they need to get younger. Both Tartan and Ward are over 30. You have Harris is more of a linebacker. You have Moore, who's coming off an injury. I'm not sold on Hufanga as a full-time starter in this league. I think he's more of a special teamer that can fill in. And so, you're going to need another guy that can come in and compete if you're not going to go into the free agent market with a Matthew or a Tartar or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with getting younger and cheaper in the starting lineup. You're going to need that with everybody's salaries going up. Kittle's getting paid more. You're going to have extensions to Debo and Bosa and et cetera, et cetera. And to have a starter that's going to be on another rookie deal is going to how we're going to win Super Bowls.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about receivers there. John V, he said Marquise Brown. I think he met Goodwin probably. That's another name that's out there. I mean, he was a part of this team and did show some good things. So, that's, if he's willing to play another year, who knows what's going on with him. He's got his family that he started and whatnot, but if he's willing to come play for another year, I wouldn't scoff at that either. Definitely not. You can always use speed. So especially cheap speed. Like, I'm all about it.
I can dust off my number 11 jersey and get it going.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. There's a lot of options there in the draft and I think it's going to be fun for us to talk, right? We talked Trey Lance versus Fields versus whoever for 3 months straight, and heated debates. And now we're going to have more players to look at, more debates on where they should go, especially after free agency and everything like that. It's going to be very interesting. Before we get ahead, what do you think about, speaking of the draft, the combine report saying that over 150 athletes said they're probably not going to show up if the COVID protocols don't change?
Man, here's the thing. That sucks for us as fans, for sure, if that is the case. But I feel like things are loosening up or trending towards loosening up in a lot of places. These players have more power than what people want to give them credit for. And if that's something they're not comfortable with, then listen, use your power. You don't have to show up to these things. You're still probably going to get drafted. And if that's something you don't want to do, there was no combine last year. It worked out fine. Do your private workouts and go that route. But as a fan, it certainly sucks. I know that there are some people that want to go cover the combine that are going to miss out on some really good players if that's the case. But I feel like the NFL, NBA, these leagues need to let up a little bit. Right now, like I said, things seem to be trending more towards opening up. Obviously, some states are a little bit different and cases are a little bit different. But, at this point, if you're requiring vaccines and mandates with boosters and all of that, trust in what's out there. These are young, strong athletes that have a low risk of getting super sick regardless. They are taking the mandated vaccines that science says works. And so that right there is should be enough to get you by. You don't have to take all these extra crazy steps. And if these players are comfortable doing what they want to do, and they feel strongly about not doing the testing and mandates and whatever else they want to do, then that's their prerogative. It's certainly something that they have power to, at least before they're in the league, decide whether that's something for them or not. So,
we saw it last year that the pro days worked and people still got drafted, and people still got drafted high. And where it sucks I think it's going to be depending on the player, right? If they think they're going to get drafted in the first round, they just want to do the pro day and not show up, then they're going to do that. If you're a 5th or 7th round guy and you got to get your name out there, maybe you suck it up to push yourself up the draft board. It'll definitely be interesting to see if that lightens up, especially since it was a last minute ad. A lot of the agents are saying it was the last minute factor of them changing it was the main reason why they're upset. If they would have known about it the whole time, and it would have been a less big of a deal. So we'll see how it works out. It is unfortunate. I know, my co-host for Between Two Beards tomorrow afternoon was planning on going. And so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Jessie, a pleasure coming on. And thank you for helping me in the beginning stages of the seeds of this channel. And
sure.
Please go like and subscribe my channel, like and subscribe on Last Second Sports. Constantly good content out there. You guys got a lot of good interviews last year. Appreciate you helping me out and coming on. You've always been a good friend since we started talking, and it's been good. It's been good talking to you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Excited to see you kind of branch out and do your own thing. And, I love that I'm one of the first people on here. So thank you, man. I appreciate it. It means the world to me.
Thank you so much. So yeah, again, like and subscribe. We're doing all kinds of content here at Cerberus Sports Talk, whether from baseball, football, hockey, all that kind of stuff like that. So the description will be in all the videos. You can follow me on Twitter at RandoCommando24. Jessie's Twitter handle right there at the bottom, scrolling through from right to left. Thank you so much, and have a good night.